need really to go deeper into structuring the entire financing by providing upstreams guarantees, which are by per se, let's say, not controversial, but not even easy to structure, and also controlling the whole funding, which goes through shareholder and subordinated loans, so you have your pledge rights on those, so you can enforce and get the repayment. So the current, let's say, restrictions in the Serbian currency control rules makes this entire financing more complicated than it should be, and we're hoping, I mean, once the industry picks up and there is appetite for royalty financing, that the regulator will have, let's say, an ear for that to try to relax the rules a bit in order to allow direct payments by the project company. I mean, the policy of the Serbian regulator, which is the central bank, is to, let's say, control the outflow of capital, especially foreign currency, which is understandable because the state has had its issues with, exchange rates against hard currencies. However, I mean, we hope that this policy might change in the future once the instrument picks up in order to relax it and have, let's say, at least up until certain thresholds, royalty payments allowed. Another possible issue to be looked out for the, let's say, project or exploration companies is structuring its intercreditor arrangements if it reaches, let's say, the construction phase, where it will be eligible for debt financing or project financing from Serbian or international banks. If you do not agree on an intercreditor agreement early on, you basically may be held hostage by your royalty holder, because, I mean, the banks, they're not really happy to see that someone has guaranteed revenue stream, which effectively ranks them senior to bank debt. So the banks will want to see that these are maybe even subordinated to bank debt, or that they're clear waterfalls which will be obliged. If you do not if you do not agree on these early on, I mean, you are basically later dependent on the royalty holder, which can affect your financing decisions. Of course, it's possible to agree early on early redemption of the royalties, so you as the, let's say, mining company which have confirmed reserves and deposits, you have interest to fully repay and regain your royalties to have more debt capacity for cheaper debt, because royalty, as you may imagine, is not the cheapest way of financing coming at the early phase. Also, I mean, the earlier you get into royalties, it's more expensive and your bargaining power is less than later when the geological data is more advanced and when you have more data that evidences that backs your business case. So let's see, I mean, it will be interesting to see, having heard all the positive outlooks and the investors coming to Serbia, if besides joint venture and earning arrangements, if royalties will also pick up, and if the government stakeholders will, let's say, come the way of the investors and try to relax the regulations a bit. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, comments? Or maybe Eric can tell us something about more conservative way of financing.
Thank you very much for inviting EBRD and me personally to this event. I love this event, and I'm impressed about so many showing up, and there's always exciting new contacts to be made. I'm going to give you a little overview of the EBRD with a focus on our mining industry financing. I am myself the head of the team in the bank that is doing oil, gas, and mining. So mining is clearly something that has become important for us, for all the good reasons that you have heard earlier today. Let me try this. I hope it won't stop all the pacemakers in the room. So this is where we operate, and if you want to have a look at our mining strategy, because we're the only IFI that has a board-approved mining strategy, then you can, on this presentation that will be available to you from the organizers, you can go to the website on this address there, and you can find it and look at it. It's quite interesting. It has a lot of information about Serbia and other countries. And this is a little bit about why EBRD is still good to work with. We have certain strengths. We take a long-term view. We are commercial about what we do. We can help you in dialogue with authorities. Now, given the mining industry has a hard time to work without licenses, sometimes it's good to have a good partner like EBRD who can help you in the dialogue with authorities when it comes to your license and permits. We also have a lot of local presence in 36 countries. We have 42 offices, and in fact, I have a colleague sitting right down there. Maybe she can stand up, because she speaks the language that I don't. And she's available at anyone, at any time here in Serbia. And then we have expertise in structuring projects of all kinds, for the very small down to basically $500,000 up to several hundreds of million dollars. We have expertise in debt, in equity, in royalty finance, in subordinated debt, and all these kinds of instruments that by the end of the day is going to help finance your activities. Come to us early on, free of charge. We're happy to talk and give you advice and help structuring something that can work for you. That can be a good first stop before you go to the expensive lawyers. Now, we have today in the mining sector done about 85 projects. They are worth today more than 10 billion euros, and we have put 4 billion into that number. So a decent representation in terms of investing in the industry, debt and equity. We do this with 30 bankers in my team who are specialists in mining. We also have a mining engineer who can tell us when we are looking at a project that doesn't make sense. And then, of course, we have our local offices like here in Serbia, and they are critical for us to understand what is going on in each country. We do, as you can see here, investment for many of the companies you know and you heard about today. Whether it has been equity at an early stage, even at exploration stage. I have 3 projects which are so early that we are probably more safe to go to the casino and invest our money. So don't tell us we are not risk willing. And we are particularly looking at Kinkora in copper in Mongolia. They may hit the jackpot, they may not, but you know, I still sleep fairly quiet every night because I believe, and it often comes down to the team, their intelligence and their connections. And a team like the one in Kinkora just had the right composition for us to feel convinced to put a little investment in there. And that also helped them attract other investors. Let me come back to that later on in the panel, because I'm probably going to be asked about how we're going to deal with this type of companies, if I'm not mistaken. So here's a bit more companies, and you can see we both finance the small juniors and the major miners, and we also finance service companies. So that's interesting. For those of you who are providing a service, providing equipment, come to us as well. We have a lot of tools. Some of them are highly flexible, like the trade facilitation program, which I don't have time to explain here, but in a nutshell, it can help you get your equipment financed between an importer and an exporter very quickly. We have a team in the bank that takes 48 hours of approving a guarantee for equipment sale into a project. And we do thousands of deals like that, transactions every year. So trade facilitation is also a product we have. Have a look at our website. Find out which banks that need to raise a letter of credit and how EBRD can help make sure that letter of credit becomes AAA rated. So when we look at mining countries, obviously there are differences in our region. These are some of the important countries that we work with. They fall in 3 big cakes. The one in yellow are quite specific because they are countries where either they are running out of mineral resources or they have mineral resources, but they're not very good at developing them. And if they don't develop them, they will have an economic shock. So therefore, we try to work with these countries to help them either, when it's necessary, to diversify out of the mining sector, to be less sensitized to the industry, or give them an extra helping hand in bringing in investors to develop their deposits. This is heavy work, but it's also very gratifying when we have success. Then you have the donut with the green balls in it. The crosses there mean that these countries already have important global investors or leading investors. So there's a knowledge, there are supply chains, there are skills in the country. Serbia, as you can see, fit nicely in there. And we think that Serbia would actually start lifting a little bit upwards to the right because exploration potential in Serbia is high. And as that is being financed, you will see the endowments being registered in Serbia to increase, but you will also, of course, see that Serbia gradually, hopefully, will have 5% of GDP coming out of the mining sector. Then you have the red spots. It doesn't mean they are from a communist country. It means these are countries where there are reform issues for the most part. Take Egypt. It has huge potential in mining. All of you who have a little bit of interest in the pharaohs and the pyramids will remember the Nubian gold. It was the most famous brand of gold in the world for thousands of years. Now, maybe it has been forgotten. But there are grades down there in Egypt at 14 gram a ton, but they are not explored. Why? Because the legal framework in Egypt is still treating the mining sector as if it was an oil and gas sector. And it isn't. If you treat it that way, you won't make a profit. So there's been 27 years of discussions in Egypt about how to change the legislation, and it's now coming through. We are waiting literally every week for the news of the breakthrough where the mining sector finally will be set free in Egypt, and we can have more exploration companies to come in to hunt for the resources. We want to be one of the first that is helping that. So this is, in a nutshell, how we see our region in terms of countries. And then our strategy is really one of feedback and working with the countries and the companies. So when you're in the green spot, you also have, from our side, a unique dialogue with the countries where we discuss with the government what kind of reforms they have the willingness to do on the back of a diagnostics of the country. And then, together with the government consent, we do investments, we do policy dialogue engagement, and we do technical cooperation to help implement reform. And then the circle sort of runs around from gradual improvement. Or as the Japanese will say, this is kaizen at work. I mean, sort of gradual improvements every year. The same is the case for the yellow countries, so to say, but the involvement of us is even deeper and more resource demanding. Just briefly on Serbia, because my time is running out. On the right-hand side, there's a brief diagnostics, very high level of Serbia's profile in terms of the mining economy. What you see immediately is that it's actually quite well governed. What we would love to see there in a reform challenge is that Serbia becomes an EITI member. My only question is, why not? We can't see one single reason why Serbia would not go straight to the top and be a performer on EITI. It is easy to do, and we are willing to help. We have done that in other countries. Help with the EITI membership, help with implementing the necessary reporting. I think Serbia, for this is an open door. It's easy to do. And it will send a very good signal to investors, because despite you know better, many investors outside, they still wonder, Balkans, isn't that a difficult place? Isn't that a place where there's a bit of corruption going on and so on? And they may be a little intimidated by that. So getting EITI membership is a beautiful signal to the investors. The other point we think there can be more work on is, of course, to have a more inclusive mining sector. And we heard about the need to bring women into mining. We couldn't agree more. It's a natural decision. If you want to improve your recruitment, why only hire every second person? Hire every person, and that means hire the women too. And by the way, the best brains in this room, I would argue, are probably one sitting in the head of a woman. The third thing we can do something about is the infrastructure. EBRD last week were part of closing a deal to finance trains in Serbia, 18 trains, but these are for people. They're not for ore. But we would like to work with the authorities to look at improving the railway network, because that could really unleash and catalyze development also in the mining sector. So that's where our priorities are. We can't do it alone. We need you to help us. We have a can-do attitude, because 80% of what we do in business is with private sector companies, and they don't like bureaucrats. So having worked with them, they taught us to not be bureaucratic. Otherwise, we can't do the business. So when you speak to us, you probably will feel a little difference, and we are proud about that. If we cannot help, we will feel sad. So challenge us. We like a problem. That's where we're different from other banks. So I'm going to skip this, but I just want to leave you with one thought. First, we are looking for good examples of innovation and technology, both in process and also in equipment, so to say. Why? Because next year in May 2020, in Berlin, there will be a summit called the Raw Material Summit. It's sponsored by EIT Raw Materials, which is a body funded by the EU. EBRD has 2 hours prime time at the conference. And we want to bring in examples from our region, from you, of good process, good technologies, innovative thinking that we can showcase. We have resources in the bank to make a little film of it, to make a presentation of it, because part of winning in the mining game is to make this region not the number 4 region that investors will look at, but to make it region number 1 or 2. And part of that is to be able to showcase concretely the skills and the engineering knowledge that is so unique in this region, and it just needs to be communicated to the world. So we would look forward for anyone with interesting, innovative ideas, good standards, good practice, and can be part of our showcase in Berlin next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions? Not for now. Well, Milana, last few years I repeated that there is no development. We have a new law, we have a great potentials, but it looks the discussions are more substantive this year. The room is full even after lunch. So what do you think?
Well, I think that Serbia is getting better and better. That's what I think.
Okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I first want to thank the Tsamokos Group International for organizing this wonderful conference and for giving us a standing at this conference. And briefly, I'll say what our law firm does.